known to make use of captured panthers. One of them, called Dauphine, can be found in the French tech tree. This is a Panther G without side skirts and with a regular mantlet covered in Zimmerid paste. This panther, despite being a part of the French army, still bears German colors, which might be a bit confusing on the battlefield. Watch out for the aforementioned aspects of its appearance and the few French markings that are actually there. Also, the base design of the Panther was used to produce one of the most terrifying German tank destroyers of World War II era, the Jagdpanther. Good front armor, decent mobility, an excellent pack. All in all, the only serious flaws of the Panther tank family are A. a rather slow reverse, and B. thin side armor. If we're speaking about fire rate, Panther's cannon is on par with the Soviet 85mm gun and just a bit slower than the British 17-pounders. These tanks are also pretty fast, given their considerable weight and the time of their production, of course. They also drive very smoothly, allowing you to consistently land your shots on the move. Basically, thanks to their excellent guns, sturdy front armor, and advantageous elevation angles, Panthers make for very capable long-range and mid-range combatants. Which Panther is your favorite? Tell us please in the comments below. And boom! See you in battle. The shooting range. In this episode, pages of history, Michel Vernis and his outside-the-box thinking, tactics and strategy, top 10 useful advice for tankers, and metal beasts, the pros and cons of the French saber. The F-86K Sabre Dog is a French subsonic jet fighter at BR 9.0. This machine is a part of a big family of the American Sabres. It is as reliable as its brothers, but has a couple of unique aces up its sleeve. Deadly cannons, a radar, and an afterburner engine. As for the looks, this one resembles a classic early generations jet fighter. You can distinguish this Sabre from the others judging by its transformed nose construction and bigger dimensions. Well, actually, this F-86 modification received so many changes and brand new features that it almost got a new index outside the Sabre family. It has a swept two-spar wing. It has protected fuel tanks both in the wings and in the central part of the plane. It has a radar in the nose. And the cabin is protected with 38mm bulletproof glass, a 6mm steel plate, and a 12.7mm plate in the back of the pilot's seat. The offensive armament offers 4 20mm cannons added by a couple of Sidewinder missiles, and no, that's it. Yeah, the Sabre Dog doesn't have various payload options, but its main purpose is to keep the sky clear. For that, it has accurate and powerful 20mm cannons that give out a burst of 10 kilograms of death per second, which is enough to turn anything that so much as flashes within your line of sight into a cloud of dust. And if things will fix it. It also flies quite well. Sure, there are some more maneuverable machines in the game, but thanks to a powerful afterburner engine, the Sabre Dog will be among the first to climb anywhere you want it to. And it has a radar as well. Sure, it's one of the early models, but it will still help you, as most of your enemies don't have anything like that at all. So, the radar. The air-to-air missiles. This sounds like something that should be installed onto an aircraft that was produced a little later. The Sabre Dog was indeed one of the first fighters to receive these toys, and they gave it a great advantage. But there is a payback. They don't yet work as well as you'd hope them to. For example, the Sidewinder 9B is one of the earliest modifications of this missile. Technically, it can lock onto targets up to 4 kilometers away, but in reality, you'd really want to launch it from a much closer distance, and preferably at the flattest trajectory possible. These rockets aren't very good at maneuvering, and they don't like overloads either. The aircraft itself also requires a careful pilot. It can fall apart if you try a sharp maneuver at a speed of about 1000 kph. Moreover, in afterburner mode the engine consumes fuel at a lot faster than usual rate, so think twice before flying out with half-empty fuel tanks. Considering all this information, the best strategy for the Sabre Dog is a classic hit and run. That way, you'll be a lot more effective than during a lengthy close combat. By the end of the 1920s, engineers all over the world realized that a one-engine fighter has a lot of restrictions as a concept, especially when it comes to engine power. Those who weren't meddling in the arcane art of aircraft design only saw that planes were becoming faster almost every day. But the professionals have already understood that. Sooner rather than later, classic engines would reach their maximum potential. They needed a new solution. But where to get it? Move on to especially powerful engines with extreme exotic architecture? Yeah, they've got problems of their own, most of which wouldn't be resolved till the end of World War II. Since we're mentioning it, perhaps install 2 engines instead of 1? Great idea, except for the fact that the aerodynamic drag around the classic 2-engine planes would eat out the entire power coming from the second engine. Or maybe just wait for a more powerful engine? Again? We're going back to square one here. How could one build a 2-engine fighter with all its advantages, but also without losing the perks of a 1-engine plane? Lots of aircraft designers for the first half of the 20th century suffered defeat after defeat trying to solve this puzzle. And this is why the story of Michel Vernis and his VB-10 is considered rather special. While he was still working for the Latécoère company, this outstanding French engineer installed a tandem of 2 engines inside an experimental attack aircraft, the Laté 299A, right in front of the cabin. The idea was that each of the engines rotated its own air screw, though the 2 propellers made a single coaxial unit. But the military command didn't like the idea of a huge nose blocking the pilot's view. Okay? So what if we move one of the engines behind the cabin and use a long shaft to transfer the torque from the engine to the propeller? Who's to stop us, huh? That's right. Nobody. The Americans did it themselves on their Era Cobra and didn't ask anyone for permission, you know. Moreover, far, far away, somewhere in Japan, another outstanding aircraft designer, Takeo Doi, had about the same thoughts concerning his upcoming Ki-64 fighter, though Michel Vernis didn't know about it at that time. The VB-10 was very unusual, so it wasn't easy to get it into production. The project had been finalized long time prior. Its amazing performance data had been calculated and recalculated, but the French military was still reluctant to green-light it. They didn't believe that the exotic layout of this aircraft would be successful. When the VB-10 was finally built, tested, and almost prepared for serial production, came the summer of 1940. France capitulated. The half-finished prototype caught the attention of the Germans, but Michel Vernis and his aides weren't very interested in finishing it, neither for the invaders nor for the Vichy government. At some point, they switched to plain sabotage, pointing out numerous non-existent problems of this unique two-engine aircraft, preventing it from becoming operational. The factory had a lot of weird accidents too. Some days they would find sugar in the gasoline tanks. Other times it was sand in bearings. And when all these problems were finally over, the Americans suddenly came in and bombed everything to smithereens, including the German Guard. Another odd coincidence. Not a single French worker was present at the factory during the attack. By the time France was liberated by the Allies, the only thing they'd achieved under German control was that they had stored lots of materials required for production. Now Vernis had everything ready, and he didn't intend to lose his chance. The first flying prototype was ready by the summer of 1945. He crafted it in a couple of months, almost manually. And the French military was only pushing him to make it quicker, because by that point, they've all heard about this similar and amazing Japanese aircraft, whose performance was incredibly super-duper. The layout worked. The very first flight proved it spectacularly. The aircraft could easily speed up to 700 kph, it was stable, could fly easily with only one engine working, and could carry a lot of guns and ammo. The generals were so happy they ordered 200 of those birds at once. But it was already too late. We can only guess the look of awe and terror on Goering's pilots' faces if the order for these 200 planes had been placed by the end of 1939. But in 1946, it was already time to think about the jet fighter. As for the speedy piston-engine machines, by that time you could buy something with very similar performance data from an American Aircraft Corporation at almost the price of scrap metal. In the end, they managed to build 2 prototypes, and then the order was cancelled. Now it was time for Michel Vernis to demonstrate his outside-the-box thinking in very, very different projects. In this episode, we've decided to make a list of the most useful advice for those who play on ground tech. They will help you get better if you only begin your journey through any ground tech tree. And if you're already an experienced player, you just might remember something you've long forgotten. One of the most useful skills you just have to master is angling the enemy rounds. But how can you find the optimum angle that would be most effective specifically for your tank? Go to your hangar, toggle armor viewing mode, and rotate the tank until its front and side armor show the same readings for effective thickness. This will be the angle at which your machine is the most secure. It will help you prepare for battles both in the open and on different cover. Lots of tankers click to battle right after they log into the game. And that's quite understandable, really. But you won't achieve greatness without learning the weak spots of your enemies. Make it a rule to spend 5 to 10 minutes after each login looking at vulnerable areas of your potential opponents in the Protection Analysis menu, one tank at a time. Where can you pierce it? With what rounds? What damage specifically can you inflict this way? You'll find out that your strategies on the battlefield will start to change soon enough. If, despite our previous advice, you happen to face an enemy you don't know yet, or you've just forgotten where you can pierce it, or where its modules are located, you can, of course, take a random shot. You might get lucky after all. But the better idea is to shoot the target in the barrel. That way, you'll buy yourself some time to take a couple of extra attempts, or just flank the enemy and shoot him in the side while he's repairing. If the opponent's armor is very thin, your explosive rounds will fly right through it without inflicting a lot of damage. You've got two options here. First, use a high explosive round. But not everybody has it, and moreover you'll spend a lot of precious time reloading. Second option is to shoot the enemy in the engine. It's a huge module, and the chances that you'll pierce it through are almost non-existent. And that means that the explosion will hit the combat compartment. Also, that way you might cause a hull break effect and destroy the enemy with a single shot. Light and medium tanks can call for artillery strikes. The more experienced players know that it's not only useful when it comes to scaring the opponents away or destroying them. Actually, that's really not the most effective way to do it. But it's a great recon tool as well. If a projectile lands near the enemy, you'll see him on your minimap. That way, you can scout your planned route and spare yourself the trouble of running into any surprise meetings. Everybody knows the basics of scouting in the game. If you spot the enemy, your teammates will see a dot on their minimaps. The better radio connection they have, the further they will be to still receive recon data from you. But apart from that, there is the active scouting option that's available to light tanks only. By default, it's assigned to V button, V for Victor. By picking a target with a press of your mouse wheel and using active scouting on them, you mark them for your entire team and get rewards when your allies hit the target you've scouted. It's one of the most important things a light tank can do. Don't neglect it. When the distance to the target is large, don't hesitate to use your rangefinder. This option is available to any tank, even if a certain machine physically doesn't have a device like this. In this case, the gunner will make a rough guess on his own, though his estimates will of course be a little less accurate. There is no default button for the rangefinder, so you need to visit Controls, then Tank, Miscellaneous, and Rangefinder to assign it. You can increase the accuracy of your aim with sight distance control. It's usually helpful to bind it to your mouse wheel instead of using it to simply zoom in and out. With those changes implemented, you can enter sniper mode and scroll the wheel to shift your vertical aim up and down the range scale. If you know the exact distance to the target, you can forget about guessing the right elevation angle. Just set the required distance with your mouse wheel and aim like you shoot point-blank range. When firing on the move, there's another useful habit to develop. Don't hit the brakes, because if you do, your barrel will abruptly go down, then up, then down again. We call it bobbing, and it's like that for several seconds. So if you need to stop, just release the gas and let the machine lose speed gradually. That way, it'll be a lot easier to hit a target. Still, bobbing isn't a bad thing, not always. When you get used to stopping without bobbing, it'll be useful to go a bit further and learn to bob on purpose. An abrupt stop or start will bob the nose of the tank and the barrel with it, giving you a chance to fire somewhere you couldn't before. For example, the more experienced players use this trick when they lack elevation angles. That's our top 10 advice for tankers. But before we go to the next segment, here's another useful bit of information. We do repeat it quite a lot, but still. The mini-map. Don't forget about the mini-map and your ability to communicate with other players using it. You've found an enemy? that probably isn't visible to the rest of your team? Hold Alt and click the map. And yeah, don't forget to look at it as well, so that your teammates' signals aren't in vain. Even a communication as simple as this may drastically reflect the overall scores of your team. By the way, you can zoom in and out of the mini-map with your mouse wheel by holding the same Alt button. And now, moving on to our traditional Hotmail. The first message was sent by a player called Alexander Sirigar.
Will we be able to get deep wading capability and tank snorkel for some tanks?
Hi there. Indeed, in reality, some tanks could cross water obstacles by driving on, say, a riverbed. But those actions require a lot of preparations and aren't possible during an actual battle. And our game is centered around the fight itself. Then there's a question sent by Star Wars Expert. How many kills can you make with one shot in a tank against other tanks? In real in-game situations, you'd be extremely lucky to destroy even 2 tanks with one shot. But if you fit certain special conditions, you know what? This sounds like a nice topic for another challenge. We'll try it someday. A user called RC Nation asks, "Please do a climbing the ranks with British airplanes, please." Hi there. We're planning on making a climbing the ranks video about every nation. Nobody will be forgotten. But we hear you, and we'll try to make the video about Britain sooner. Lucas Boulanger writes, "Would parameters make a shell that is slower than another shell of the same caliber and type have more penetration than the faster one?" It's not just the size and speed that determine the penetration. There are lots of parameters to consider. For example, the weight of the round, its inner structure. Moreover, if you fire, say, a flathead round, it will have a better penetration than a pointed one when hitting the target's armor at an angle. Well, that's it for today. You've been watching The Shooting Range by Gaijin Entertainment. So come on, people, subscribe to the channel and press that bell button. Now you gotta leave a like and tell us what you think in the comments below. See you in a week.
The Shooting Range.
In this episode, Pages of History, how did the Germans manage to create 2 tigers at the same time? Tactics and strategy, radar everywhere. And Metal Beasts, a tank shooting bursts of APF SDS rounds. Here's the new novelty for Metal Beasts. A Swedish light tank at BR 9.7 called the Stridsforden, or simply STRF 9056. There's yet another version of the STRF 90 combat vehicle. We've already told you about its modification with a 120mm smoothbore weapon. As for our today's guest, this one is outfitted in a more appropriate fashion for its class, with ATGMs and an autocannon. The 2-plane stabilized 40mm automatic cannon elevates from -8 to +35 degrees. Additional weaponry includes an anti-tank missile launcher and a machine gun in the turret. The crew is equipped with thermal sights, and the vehicle itself has smoke launchers. The driver is located in the front, with protection screens separating him from the engine and the transmission. The gunner and the commander are in the turret. The ammo is in the center of the hull, and in the rear, there are the Build 2 missile tubes. The armor is virtually non-existent. The thin steel plates won't even protect you from some of the enemy machine guns. Overall, the vehicle's performance data is typical for your usual IFV, although it has its own features that make it quite universal for any battlefield and any distance. First of all, we're talking about firepower. You can use the HEVT rounds against airborne targets, and for everybody else, you've got APFSDS rounds piercing 137mm of armor from half a kilometer away. Their advantage is that you can literally fire them in bursts, sending both AA Tech and light tanks back to the hangar, and even MBTs, if they forget who they're up against and show you their size. The autocannon is good at any distance. Up close, you can rely on your firepower and the stabilizer, and you can make use of the projectile's good ballistics while firing from further away. Plus, if you spot an enemy helicopter nearby, switch to those HEVT rounds and show them what you've got. But that's not all. You've got another weapon here, which is an ATGM launcher firing Build 2 missiles. They don't seem like something special at first glance. Only 510mm of penetration, low speed, plus you can't fire them on the move. And even when you stop, it takes some time to get the launcher up. But the trick here is in the ability of these missiles that we've already mentioned in the previous episode. Build 2 ATGMs have the OTA, or the Overfly Top Attack ability, which means that they detonate while flying above the target, sending the cumulative jet downwards instead of forward. It allows you to easily destroy tanks hidden behind various covers and terrain features, as well as deal with the most protective of them in the open. Why? Well, because in this case, the point of impact is the roof, which is usually protected way worse than the frontal projection. Finally, the STRF 9056 is quite mobile, enough to arrive at points at the same time as MBTs, and enough to quickly retreat if push comes to shove. A couple of major things to remember, though. Don't be an eyesore in your enemy's sights more than you have to. Leave their line of fire in time and stay close to Allied MBTs in close combat. Their protection is way more reliable, especially when compared to your non-existent one. The story of German Tigers is full of strange events and unexpected plot twists. Think about it. During the war, Germany launched the production of 2 Tigers at once, one by Henschel and the other by Porsche, without any testing whatsoever. Those were 2 very complex and expensive machines, completely different in terms of construction and very much alike in terms of performance. So, why would one even think of producing both of them simultaneously? Traditionally, the man to blame for all this is considered to be Ferdinand Porsche. He, allegedly, abused his friendship with Hitler to launch the production of his own tank without authorization. And that Tiger turned out to have so many problems that after a while, they had to convert it into a tank destroyer. But we suspect that in reality, it was a bit more complicated. One of the reasons for that suspicion is that at the time, there was no company in the whole of Germany able to create and assemble a tank from scratch without any help. Production of any tank included a whole list of contracts, approvals, and contractors. And the Porsche company was no more than a simple construction bureau, at least at that time. Whereas all their Tigers and Ferdinands were assembled at the Steyr factory. But wait, if Porsche wasn't able to assemble tanks on its own, how did he get into the tank building industry in the first place? Well, The thing was that the Henschel company, soon to be rival of Porsche, had been struggling to create a decent heavy tank for the German army. They received the order all the way back in 1937, but the project wasn't going well, and even after 3 years of waiting, there was nothing to launch into production. Apparently, at some point, the Reich's leadership lost their temper and created a special tank commission, with its first task being finally having that project completed. And who was named head of that commission? That's right, Ferdinand Porsche himself. He was the one to task the Krupp company with creating a prototype tank turret with an 88mm weapon, while his own company designed the chassis for it. And it was quite different from other German tanks of the time. 2 air-cooled engines were connected to an electric transmission, the drive sprockets were in the rear of the vehicle, and the torsion suspension was placed outside the hull. Ferdinand Porsche named the machine the Tiger. By the way, he was exactly the one to inspire Germans to give animal names to their military vehicles. Meanwhile, things were finally put in motion, and in the summer of 1941, they'd started preparing to assemble the first line of Tigers by Porsche. At the same time, Henschel finally came up with a design of their own Tiger with the same turret, but with a completely different chassis. And yes, they launched it into production as well. Moreover, the need for heavy tanks was so desperate that both of these machines went into production right away, without assembling and testing the prototypes first. But the miracle didn't happen. The first tanks had lots of problems, and it took a lot of extremely hard work to fix them. The Porsche's Tiger was especially unlucky. Its engines were unreliable and were overheating fast, and the new cooling system required a complete overhaul of the hull. The endeavor to build 2 Tigers simultaneously failed, and the Germans decided to focus on only 1 tank. Technically, both of them weren't hopeless, but they decided to go on with the Henschel version, while its competitor was repurposed into a tank destroyer. They changed the troubled engines, improved the chassis into something way more promising, and launched the result into production as well. Today, it is known as the Ferdinand. But that's a story for another time. Radar has been an essential part of War Thunder for quite some time now. It all started with top-tier missile carriers sporting surface-to-air missiles. Later, lots of planes and helicopters got their own radar as well. And in recent update, we've even added ground tech that's able to spot other ground targets. And of course, ships got their share of these technologies as well. So, today we've decided to somewhat organize all this variety of radar and talk about the options that players can currently use, on which vehicles, against which opponents, and, of course, how to do all of that. Let's start with the basics. When your vehicle's radar is active, you can see it working in the corner of your screen. It pinpoints potential targets and shows them as green dots for enemy vehicles and underlined dots for your allies. It's also not uncommon to see 2 systems sharing responsibilities inside one radar. One of them detects potential targets and the other one tracks them. If that's the case with your machine, you'll see multifunction menu. G for air-to-ground purposes, or to AA for air-to-air scanning. You can do it by pressing 4 in the multifunction radar menu. After your radar displays some detected targets, you can select one of them and lock onto it with buttons 2 and 3 of the same menu accordingly. A red rectangle will indicate the sector where your target is located. With systems like that, these helicopters become one of the most menacing forces on the battlefield, considering that they also have thermal sights and good ATGMs. Many AA vehicles also have radar capable of detecting targets and locking onto them. Earlier machines had simple radar systems like radio rangefinders on the M163 Vulcan and on the CDAM-25. They can't detect targets on their own, but if you lock onto one of them, they will help you aim at it using lead markers. The more modern systems can be divided into two groups, active and passive. An active radar emits radio signals, which unmask your location to the enemy planes and helicopters, so consider turning it off while you're on the move. While, say, the British Stormer uses a passive radar that relies on visual data instead of radio signals. It allows this vehicle to move more stealthily, as it doesn't trigger any radar warning receivers. But, on the other hand, it's a lot easier to lose the target behind some trees or smoke. Fight. guests someday. So, what do you say?
in the back of the turret, which is going to be a little bit of an issue, I have to say. But we'll see how that goes. And because I know that Reddit wants to see it, let's take a look at the stats. Whoa! All the modification, you have a laser rangefinder, you have DM33, you have all that good stuff. Yeah, it's pretty much just a TAM with premium bonuses and a bit of extra chunk armor. As well. I
It's
like the
really
base camo of
nice,
it.
yeah. I'm very simple in that way, so I do like the camos.
There you go, bit of stats.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the modifications are going to be very similar. This is just a slight upgrade over towards what we have. Okay, let's move on to the